Welcome back to another episode of Crease. I am joined here by a very special guest. It is Harvard's head coach, Jerry Byrne. Coach, how you doing? How are things going? Congratulations on the quick and blazing start here to the season.
Well, not as blazing as we were, maybe a week ago, but relatively simmering, I would
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
No, it's good. Thanks for having me. And I guess I should have asked, are you Jeff's son?
I am Jeff's son. Yes, I did. I did want to touch on that and see if you did recognize the name.
I think we need to sign a non-disclosure agreement about maybe a few evenings at the park bench and
Yeah.
so talk it.
Yeah. I did want to touch on your Long Island roots. I know you're a Levittown guy. I'm sure the names, Jamie Allen, Doug Hall, maybe ring a bell.
Of course. Of
Yep.
course. There might be some bronze statues of them on Hempstead Turnpike.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did notice you are so a Chaminade grad as well.
I am.
Okay.
I was abducted at birth and taken to the leafy and ivy walls of
Yeah.
Chaminade against my will, but
There you
worked
go.
out okay.
There you go. Yeah. So, I mean, we do have a little bit of beef there. I'm a Friar. I went to St. Anthony's, so we do have.
It's a fine school. It's a fine
Yeah, I
school.
know, and I know you got some Friars on the current roster. So please say hello to Jackson Green and Jack Spidell. I coached them last year at Holy Thomas.
And Greg
And
Campese.
Greg Campese. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to coach him. He was a little bit before my time, but
I need to get some flyers.
I
It's
know.
it's three to
Well,
it's 3-0 Friars to Flyers right now.
I noticed the roster. I was like, geez, is Coach Byrne having a change of heart here? Is he truly a Friar deep
I
down?
you know. I'm kind of like Justice when it comes to recruiting. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care where you're from,
Yeah.
rich or poor, what high school, good
Sure.
high school, bad high school. If you can play, you can play.
That's it, man. That's it. So so obviously, I know you were a UMass Amherst grad as well. Had two stints, at Notre Dame, and now obviously here at Harvard. But again, just kind of wanted to touch on maybe just the start that you've had to this season, right? I mean, obviously, right now you're averaging 16 goals a game, only trailing Notre Dame. Funny enough. But just kind of talk to me a little bit about maybe your kind of theme or like what you guys what you preach to your guys and how you want them to play on the offensive end and things like that.
I think you have to start with our offensive coordinator is
Sure,
Neil Hutchinson, and he and I
sure.
coached together at Notre Dame, and he was at Towson and UMBC
Hmm.
before that. So he's a great young coach,
Hmm.
future head coach. So I think you have to start with what you have. You might
Right,
have a philosophy around offense and how you would like it to play, but there's also a catering and a customization that you have to have based on the talent
sure.
that you have, and that talent. We're in the middle of our third full season, even though we've been here for almost five
Hmm.
years. We haven't completed our third full season
Hmm.
yet, and so we're still in that kind of formative stage where we're recruiting our types of guys, and so it's that juggling between I'd like to play this way,
Right.
but this is what we have, and what's the best way to kind of organize that talent. Like, for example, if you're a basketball team and you want to be a run and gun 3-point shooting team and you have a bunch of guys who can't shoot,
Yeah.
guess what?
Not
You're
gonna
going to
work.
lose a lot of games.
Yeah.
You'll be true to your philosophy, but you won't win very much. So I think it starts with that. I think it starts. I like simplicity.
Hmm.
I think the better the teams that you play have better defenders and better one-on-one defenders. So
Sure.
whether it's set actions or,
Sure.
all right, we're going to do A and B so we can get to C. But you don't always get to C. So I think there's a kind of the fluidity
Sure.
to spacing and the reads,
Sure.
while also kind of empowering your guys to you got to make plays to win.
Right.
Like
Yeah. Play free. Yeah. Play free. Play loose.
schematics and all that stuff doesn't matter if you don't have people who are willing to. All right, this guy's on my upfield shoulder. I can get underneath, or he's on my
Sure.
downfield shoulder. I can roll back, and so I think it started. Neil does an unbelievable job and creates kind of a really good community of guys who understand their strengths but understand how we want to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you touched on it, right. You can only kind of cater to the talent that you have, right? And have to play to your players' strengths. So certainly, obviously, agree there. We touched on it a little bit. I know Ivy League is now in full swing. Obviously, last week, a tough contest with Yale. I wanted to just kind of pick your brain on like, I guess you always talk about when you get into conference play, it's just like a heightened awareness, right? Or it's just you need to make those plays and things like that. I guess the biggest differences you see when you just start to get into conference play, is it as simple as it's just the familiarity of the teams and you guys are just used to playing against them?
I mean, you know, it's the we you tend to not play as many midweek games in during your conference schedule, so that changes things. So your preparation is much different than playing, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. So part of it is you also know your opponent because they're in your not know them in the sense of scouting, but you know them because that's how you're going. One of the ways you're going to be evaluated is how do you do in your league, because that's going to predetermine your league tournament and NCAA tournament and things like that. So, I don't tend to spend a lot of time kind of talking about one game being more important than others. The People have that mindset already, so they don't need to be reminded. And so part of it is you got in our league, you have some of these rivalries we have been going on for almost 150 years. So there's more weight in there just because generations have played against each other in this game. So
Absolutely.
so part of it is when Harvard and Yale play each other, there may not be a longer rivalry in college sports. I mean, Harvard started playing lacrosse in 1877,
Uh-huh.
and so you other than wars and some other things that have
Yeah.
happened, it's probably kind of an
Yeah.
it just goes on, and that's multiple generations, and
Yeah.
so why they carry more weight sometimes is because of the media and sports coverage,
Sure.
the rivalries between alums. I don't. I tend to not over dramatize that. Guys are
Yeah.
competitive. I'm competitive. Like
Yeah.
I'll get into a fight in a pickleball or a squash match
Yeah.
just as easy as I
Yeah.
would in a sporting
Right.
event.
Right. You want to win and everything. Spitting contest, lacrosse game, whatever it is. Yeah. Rich.
As I've been wont to say, the scoreboard is always on, even when there is no scoreboard.
There you go. I like that saying. I might have to steal that, Coach. I like that saying. There we go. All righty. So I guess just moving on here. You kind of already touched on the recruiting piece a little bit. Essentially is, hey, if you're a good player, yeah, we'll take you. But I guess just maybe like some certain characteristics that you look for in a recruit, or is it just obviously is it seeing him make a couple plays and that's as simple as it is? But I guess just maybe touch on your recruiting piece. It's funny enough. I know I think my dad and you kind of spoke the last time when I was at like the Under Armour games and things like that. So, but yeah, would love to kind of just hear you dive in on what you
Yeah,
look for in
you,
recruits.
you're much bigger now. I think that flannel jacket
Yeah,
was bigger than you back then.
yeah. I
Um,
think my size might have taken me out of the running for
yeah.
Notre Dame.
Um, the you get that question a lot, and
Sure.
I think it evolves over time.
Yeah.
And it varies by the type of place that you're at because every place has some certain challenges or opportunities. So we can't recruit every single guy that's playing lacrosse right now. It's just this is too
Yeah.
it's there's really high expectations here intellectually and academically. Not that other places don't have them, but this is
Sure.
you know year in year out statistically the hardest school to be admitted to. And so
Yep.
so I don't go to a game and I mean, you go to a game and you recognize talent, and then you don't want to fall in love too quickly because you might find out that they may not be in love with school as much as you need them to be.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so there's definitely all things being equal, talent, size, speed, strength, and things like that. But I think the people who are really good at recruiting, everybody can see the really talented
Sure.
player.
Sure.
And then it becomes a fight amongst the top 15 schools to secure that guy.
Right.
And, people think recruiting is this kind of, it's all the same. We're all standing at the same starting line. And it just isn't,
No.
because you have somebody might come from an affluent family and the scholarship
Yep.
doesn't matter that much.
Sure.
For others, I always wanted to go to Ivy League school or an ACC school, and
Sure.
and my parents went to a school like that. And you grew up probably with that kind of
Yeah,
aspiration, and
I certainly
so
did.
you have like generational things, and you have societal things, and you have behavioral things, and you have media things that are all affecting that. So it's not like in football, college
Sure.
football, where everybody had the same scholarship, but now some schools have more NIL and more financial aid. So there's so many things that go into it. But I think the people who are really good at recruiting are not just seeing the really talented. Everybody can see him,
Right.
but it's really about who's the guy who hasn't grown yet,
Hmm.
who's the guy who's maybe coming out of an injury, who's the guy who's on a really good team and he's been waiting or working toward his opportunity and he hasn't maybe gotten a moment to shine
Sure.
yet.
Sure.
And so that you got to do that well. You
Yeah.
got to find some birds with some broken wings and
That's
envision
it,
that
man.
they're going to fly at some point.
That's
So
it. That's it.
so that like so what I look for in that is obviously work capacity and compete level
Sure.
and coachability
Sure.
and curiosity. I think is really important mindset of
Yeah.
the self drive to get better because there's so many tools to get better on
Yeah.
YouTube and you know Instagram and things like that. Curiosity to ask questions of how can I do that? Can I learn how to do that on my own? Do I
Yeah.
have to ask somebody to help guide me there? Because just playing on your club team or having cool helmets and reversibles and custom gloves, man, if that was the pathway to playing at a high level, then God, there'd be a million of those guys playing out there. So I
I
think self drive and curiosity and obviously competitiveness.
love those answers. We truly do. I love that curiosity piece too. I mean, I think that's something that, I think even kids when they're getting recruited are maybe a little hesitant to ask those kind of questions or even ask a coach, hey, where do you see me, fitting into your team or fitting into your offense or defense, things like that. So yeah, love
Yep.
those answers. You kind of touched on something I wanted to, whether it's the transfer portal or even the NIL type of money and things like that. Is that something, when it comes to the NIL money, is that something that truly has come up when it comes to, recruiting for college lacrosse? I know, you hear about it in college football and basketball and things like that. But wanted to just maybe see, is that something that has been coming up in the college lacrosse world?
No, it's 100%.
Yeah,
Whether it's here to stay
right.
is much more interesting. Less from the NCAA is going to prohibit it, but
Hmm.
more like this money that's going into NIL
Right,
is not necessarily new money.
right,
It's money that's being siphoned from something else.
right.
Somebody who may have given $100,000 toward an academic scholarship or
Hmm. Hmm.
maintenance of a field
Hmm.
is
And
now giving it toward an NIL collective, and
yeah,
there's not a new $100,000 showing up for that field and for that.
yeah,
I mean, so
yeah, 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 yeah.
there's going to be there's going to definitely be some repercussions, but it's definitely here.
Right.
The Ivy League is, like I tell people, what your NIL is. You have the highest starting salary for any college lacrosse graduate.
Um, but just I wanted to touch a little bit on your Notre Dame tenure, right? So obviously, and there's I was interested to see there was two different tenures you had there. So you started in I think it was 1989. That was like your first kind of stop there, and then circled back later on in like 2007. So I guess just it must be pretty amazing to see kind of where that program has gone. Obviously, since you were there maybe from the very beginning. And just kind of maybe touch on your tenure there, some of the best defensemen that you got to work with there, and yeah, just again with working with Coach Corrigan as well.
Yeah, no, Kevin and I, I'm the godfather for his son Will, who coached with me for four
Yep.
years. Will's out at Air Force now, and Kevin and my brother Steve were roommates at UVA, and
Oh wow.
back overlapped with your dad was at North
Yep.
Carolina, so
Yep. Yep. Yep.
um, so kind of always was connected, and I was, Kevin's dad, Gino, and their family, so kind of just connected with them. So when Kevin became the head coach in the late '80s, they didn't have all the resources and things that they
Yeah.
had now. So I went out and got my master's in business in the business school at Notre Dame, and was able to coach. So kind of the grad assistant,
Hmm.
which doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah.
Um, So I was a grad assistant there, and again, it was a great I had a great educational experience and kind of cut my teeth on coaching, but it was more like, all right, I can go to school
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
I can afford to do it because I'm coaching. So it was more of
Sure.
like a means to an end.
Sure.
And then whatever it was, 16, 17 years later, Kevin Anderson, who had been the head assistant at Notre Dame, was stepping away and they needed somebody. And I talked my wife into coming back. My wife's a Notre Dame grad as well.
Look at
And
that.
so, again, I think it starts with, Kevin, and I think one of the lessons to learn from him is that, there are people who know things and then there's knowing people. And so, he did, like, I was, I was trying to play at a really high level at that point. My brother Steve was a great player, was my inspiration. And so, he basically said, well, I know this guy's brother, and if he's connected to him and clearly not adopted, um, I know I'm getting a good person who's going to work hard,
That's
and
yeah.
I
Absolutely.
did that, and you learn a lot of lessons about how to hire people based a little bit less on their resume, because I hadn't coached really since then. I coached a little high school and I coached a Division II school, but not
Yep.
at that level. So,
Right.
but I think he made a bet on people and character and work ethic, and so yeah, it was an unbelievable experience. It's a great place. I have unbelievable
Certainly.
strong feelings there. My two of my children went to and were athletes at Notre Dame,
Hmm.
and they got unbelievable education as a byproduct of my um, employment at Notre Dame, and again, great just a I think certain schools like Harvard and Notre Dame attract certain kinds of people, and
Certainly.
there's a self selection that happens. And if you're clear on the values that you are about, not that you don't have to work hard in recruiting, but there's a natural kind of
Absolutely.
law of
All
attraction
right.
to those kinds of places. And
Yeah.
I'm fortunate to be at one now, Harvard, and was definitely at one with Notre Dame. So being there and being able to coach with Kevin and Matt Carwick and John Crawley
Hmm.
and Kevin Anderson and Brian Fisher and Hutch and just great run of people and I was so happy for their success.
Yeah.
I thought I'd be a little bit more, envious,
Sure. Sure.
to be honest.
Sure.
Um, my wife, Tracy, who's a Notre Dame grad, who's a doctor here in Boston, she kind of helped me see that that was not how you should feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and she helped kind of guide me to see, and we went down for the Final Four, and I found myself unbelievably happy for
That's awesome.
the guys that I helped recruit
That's
there.
awesome. Yeah.
And I like if you would have said a year ago would I had those feelings. Listen, I left on my own accord,
Yeah.
for a great opportunity here. But like, I have a great wife, and she helped me, and I had unbelievable joy for those guys because I'd known some of those kids since they were 15 or 16 years old.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think, you touched on just like the work ethic and the compete level. I mean, the Kavanaughs, I think, embody that as a program wide for Notre Dame, right? And, so obviously great to see and, love to hear that, obviously you had great relationships with all those guys. So, I guess, just moving on, just real quick, I think you already kind of touched on it, what drew you to Harvard, right? It's just obviously such a prestigious school. I did want to touch on how your Harvard tenure kind of kicked off. Obviously, that was a bit of a nightmare scenario with COVID, and that was the first year. And then obviously the following year, the Ivy League kind of canceled the season. So just kind of walk me through that and kind of how you just were able to kind of navigate that whole thing. And, obviously the first couple months of your tenure were certainly pretty crazy.
Yeah. Listen, nobody at, Harvard was at the forefront of everything that was connected to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Harvard has, 13 or 14 hospitals here in Boston. They were deeply involved in all the vaccines. They
Yep.
have a school of public health. No one was asking me what my opinion was. So I didn't, I did, part of feeling powerless at times is accepting the fact that you're powerless and
Sure.
versus believing that you have some impact on something
Yeah,
and then kind of wallowing in when it doesn't become your outcome. So I
sure.
accepted the fact that I wasn't going to decide whether we were going to play or
Yep.
not, or what the next year was going to be like. So I tried to turn, lemons into lemonade.
There you go.
And again, it's been a long time, so I can't speak to all the details, but we accepted our fate, and then we went on about the work to either get better as coaches and get better as a team, get better as a culture. And I think,
Nice. Yeah.
the work that we did ended up in us making the NCAA tournament with, 14, 15 freshmen playing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
who knows if you have that year in 22 if you don't have the disappointment of the other thing. And so
Sure.
and as I told my team, it's like, if you think life is fair, you
Yeah.
better let go of that
Yeah. Real quick.
belief really quickly. You don't always get what you want.
Yep.
Sometimes you get what you
Certainly.
need.
Certainly.
Sometimes you get what you deserve. Sometimes you don't. And like, crying in your pillow about it is not going to
Certainly.
be it. It's why athletes, if you look 10 years from now, at schools like Notre Dame and Harvard, and the places that produce elite leaders,
Sure.
like, the pandemic is going to produce some of the best managers in a variety of industries, because they're used to failing and
Hmm.
they're used to disappointment. You don't win every game.
Hmm.
And so that resiliency
Sure.
is why athletes are so successful.
Yeah.
And the outcome of the pandemic is going to further prove that, when you start looking at CEOs and managers and managing directors and partners in law firms and leaders in government and leaders in business. It's going to be a lot of Harvard grads, for example, in that group. There usually is, but I think more than usual.
Yeah, I think that touched on a great point, right? You can only control what you can control. You have to lead, and just kind of, again, the whole powerless thing to it. Certainly, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. But all right, so, yeah, I did want to kind of move on into just, I guess, you're kind of, what is like the theme of Harvard? We talked with maybe like Coach Wolf from NGIT, and he touched on things like, they want to make sure, they have like things that they want their program to strive to be and live by, but they want to make sure they're not just words on the wall. So I guess just maybe some things that you guys, pride yourselves on. Obviously I've heard the word compete come out of your mouth a whole lot, work ethic, things like that. But I guess just maybe some themes that you truly try to pride your program on, and things you guys try to embody.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the same
Yeah,
things. I'm not a huge shooting shirt quote person.
for
I'm
sure.
not we don't hang back. Like, we have a quote on our hallway. It's a little literary and it's a little Harvardy. So I'm not going to share it with you because I'll probably catch some ricochets if I do. But um, I think the most important, I think the the trait that we try to communicate is gratitude.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
because there's very few guys on our team who got into Harvard on their own.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so the guys who are here as student athletes, they had unbelievable credentials and they had great skill, and we deemed them as recruitable here. So nobody got here on their own.
Sure.
And if you accept that, you tend to be very appreciative of being here
Yeah.
and getting the benefits of an elite education that is the envy of the planet. Even with all the bad PR that we've gotten, it's still, when you're holding your son or daughter, that's what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
That's where you would like your child to go. And so if we can kind of hold on to that sense of gratitude about
Absolutely.
being here, it makes you think about the people that helped you get here.
Yeah.
And when you start thinking about others and you start thinking about the people who kind of nudged and inspired and nurtured you to get here,
Hmm.
it's not a lot to ask to
Yep.
work really hard at
Yep.
being a really good player,
Yep.
being a really good person and teammate, caring about the investment your parents are making in tuition to have you come here. If you can roll all those things together, then showing up for practice in a weight room or shooting extra or watching extra film,
Yeah.
that seems like an acknowledgement of
Sure.
all the people that helped you get here. That's the least you can do.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's our message, and we don't have to beat our guys over the head with them. They see examples of that kind of spirit and generosity all around them, and I don't have to make that speech very
That's
often
that's
because our guys get it.
that's awesome. I love that answer. That's definitely an answer I don't think you hear a lot too often either, which is I mean you're in a fortunate spot, and you might as well just keep working hard. So I love that answer, Coach. I guess I just wanted to kind of finish up with one kind of question. I was always curious, when I was playing, right? Like we to like track our kind of work or something like that, right? We wore heart rate monitors and things like that. We tracked like how much we were putting in and things like that. I just wanted to kind of pick your brain. Are like analytics starting to become bigger into lacrosse or things like that, like sports science type things? Would love to kind of pick your brain on that, and as if that's something that you've seen in the college game kind of start to take off a little bit.
Yeah, no, listen. The short answer to that is yes.
Mm-hmm.
The um, we probably have. I'm because we were just making a graphic about kind of our partners and suppliers, and
Sure.
there's about 15 people, and about 8 or 9 of them are kind of performance and recovery based
Gotcha. Yeah.
technology.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's one of the great benefits of being at a place like Harvard is having alumni and resources where we can invest in that. So, an example, our whole team wears Catapult, and
Yep.
so
Yep. That's what we were.
I don't know if there's a lot of teams that have their own and their whole team is outfitted.
Mm-hmm.
So we track all of our guys' movements every time that we're on the field.
Mm-hmm.
We have a relationship with Whoop. I don't know if you know what Whoop is.
Yeah.
It's
Certainly.
a Harvard squash player founded. It's based
Yep.
here in Boston. So
Yep.
our whole team
Yep.
is on Whoop. So we're tracking, sleep and recovery. And well, I'm not tracking it individually because I don't want to, and nor am I allowed to because it's a privacy thing.
Gotcha.
But it's really about insights for your players.
Yeah.
Um, we have, I don't know, 15 Normatechs. We have a Game Ready, which is an ice. Instead of having a bag of ice on your ankle, you wear a device that kind of
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
flows through. So we have a bunch of those, Hyper Ice and Hypervolt and electronic roller stimulation
Yep.
things and
Yep.
assault bikes. And,
Yeah.
so we have all these tools to help prepare our guys, help to maintain, help them to recover. And, the challenge is that the math part of that, the analytical part, you really need to invest in some people to do that. So
Sure.
we kind of outsource that
Sure.
to evaluate, the amount of work someone does in a practice or in a game and how you make decisions about what your future practices are going to be like. We're not making in-game decisions on that.
Right.
Mostly we're using it to modify our practices and
Yep.
our training.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking. We just had a budget meeting. I'm looking for more and more tools and devices, whether it's virtual reality for goalies and things like
Oh
that.
wow.
So we're I'm always looking for that. As we're ramping up our talent and our depth.
Sure.
In our tenure here,
Yeah.
we also want to have this technology that can help guide us.
Yeah. Absolutely. That would be sick. Virtual reality for goalies. That would be very, very interesting. I would. That's pretty sick. Yeah. But all righty, Coach. That's kind of all I wanted to touch on. Thank you again for sitting down with me. I will be sure to say hello to my dad and the Levittown boys for you. And good luck the rest of the way. Good luck this weekend. And yeah, we'll be pulling for you.
Awesome. Thanks.